How to Speak Nothing and Find Peace. The 24-Hour Challenge. Our world is addicted to noise. The constant dings, the endless chatter, the pressure to always have an opinion. We scroll through feeds, listen to podcasts on our commutes, and fill every single empty moment with sound. But what if the secret to finding real peace, to truly resetting our minds, isn't about adding more, but taking it all away? What if the greatest power we have is the ability to just be quiet? I decided to try something a little extreme. I went completely silent for 24 hours. No talking, no whispering, not a single word. And what I discovered about the power of silence wasn't just interesting, it was transformative. This wasn't just about shutting my mouth. It was about learning to listen to my own thoughts and to the world in a way I never had before. I want to show you exactly what I learned and how you can feel it too. The problem. Let's be honest. When was the last time you experienced true, uninterrupted silence? It's a rare thing. Our brains are constantly processing, reacting, and formulating responses. This non-stop cognitive load is exhausting. Research shows that chronic exposure to loud environmental noise, like traffic, can elevate stress hormones. This kind of long-term acoustic stress is linked to health issues ranging from high blood pressure to anxiety. It's not just the noise outside either. The internal chatter, that nagging voice in our heads that narrates, critiques, and worries can be even louder. I realized I was caught in that exact cycle. My mind felt cluttered, my focus was fractured, and a sense of calm felt like a distant memory. I was always on, and it was draining me. That's why I took on this challenge. I wanted to see if a full day of external silence could finally quiet the internal noise. The goal was simple but daunting. 24 continuous hours without speaking or consuming any media with speech. I wanted to disconnect from the world's demands, to reconnect with myself. Emerging science even suggests silence can have profound benefits. For instance, studies on mice have shown that periods of silence were associated with the growth of new cells in the hippocampus, a brain region tied to memory and learning. I wanted to see if I could feel that for myself. Before I began, I took a snapshot of my state. My stress level felt like a solid 8 out of 10, and my focus was scattered, like trying to catch dust motes in a sunbeam. The timer was set. The experiment had begun. The ground rules. 8. Setup. To make this a true challenge, I had to set some clear rules. Rule number 1. The most obvious. Absolutely no speaking for 24 hours. No whispering, no mouthing words, nothing. Rule 2. No media that involved language. That meant no podcasts, audiobooks, TV, or YouTube. I decided that music without lyrics was okay, but I mostly avoided it to really embrace the quiet. Rule 3. Texting and writing were for logistical necessities only. I let my family and close friends know I'd be offline so they wouldn't worry. This wasn't about being antisocial, it was about being pro-solitude. Setting up my environment was key. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and stashed it in another room to avoid the temptation of a mindless scroll. I knew my usual triggers for noise working, cooking, even cleaning would be a challenge, so I planned my day around quiet activities. I grabbed a book I'd been meaning to read, my journal for reflections, and planned simple meals that didn't require following a complex video tutorial. The most important part of my setup was creating anchors for my mind. I knew that without the usual distractions, my brain would likely go into overdrive. So, I chose 2 simple mindfulness practices to come back to whenever I felt restless. A 3-minute focused breathing exercise and a 5-minute walking meditation. These weren't about reaching some mystical state. They were practical tools to ground myself when the silence started to feel a little too loud. The morning block, hour 04, the onset of restlessness. The first hour was strange. The silence felt heavy, almost like a physical presence. My hand kept twitching for my phone out of pure muscle memory. My mind, deprived of its usual buffet of stimulation, started generating its own noise. A flood of thoughts rushed in. A mental to-do list, a rehashed conversation from last week, a random song on a loop. It was immediately clear that the external silence was just amplifying the internal chaos. This is a common experience. Our brains are wired to seek input, and when it's gone, they can go into a kind of withdrawal. To deal with this, I turned to my first anchor, focused breathing. I sat down, closed my eyes, and tried to focus only on the sensation of my breath. It was incredibly hard. My mind wandered every few seconds. But the goal of mindfulness isn't to have a perfectly clear mind. It's to notice when your mind has wandered, and gently, without judgment, bring it back. Each time I returned my attention to my breath, it felt like a small win. This is where the science gets so fascinating. Practices like this help counteract the body's stress response. By focusing on the breath, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest mode. It's the antidote to the fight-or-flight response triggered by stress. In fact, a small 2006 study found that 2-minute silent pauses between music tracks were actually more relaxing than the relaxing music itself, based on changes in blood pressure and heart rate. As the first few hours passed, I also tried a body scan meditation, slowly moving my attention from my toes to my head, just noticing sensations. It made me realize how disconnected I am from my own body. The initial restlessness hadn't disappeared, but with these simple tools, it was becoming manageable. I was learning to sit with the discomfort, and in doing so, I was starting to find small pockets of peace. The midday block, hour 4:12, confronting the void. The middle of the day was the hardest part. The novelty had worn off, and the reality of a long, quiet day set in. This is where the real struggle began. A wave of boredom washed over me, so strong it felt like a physical ache. I felt an almost magnetic pull to my phone, a desperate urge to fill the emptiness with anything. It was a stark reminder of how deeply ingrained these habits are. We don't just use noise to entertain ourselves, we use it to escape ourselves. Instead of caving, I turned to my second anchor, walking meditation. I went outside and walked slowly, focusing entirely on the feeling of my feet on the ground, the pressure on my heel, the roll to the ball of my foot, the lift of my toes. This practice is incredibly grounding. It pulls your attention out of the chaotic story in your head and into the physical reality of the present. During this time, I also had to confront the social impulse. I saw a neighbor, and my first instinct was to wave and call out a hello. The forced silence felt awkward, almost rude. I realized how much of our daily speech is just automatic social lubricant. Without words, I had to be more intentional. A simple nod and a smile had to do the work of a whole string of pleasantries. This is where another interesting idea from neuroscience comes in. When our minds are at rest and not focused on a specific task, a part of our brain, called the default mode network, becomes active. This network is linked to processes like self-reflection and creative thinking, and it's thought to be where we make new connections and have aha moments. During my silent walk, I felt this happening. Solutions to problems I'd been stuck on for weeks started to surface effortlessly now that I wasn't trying to force them. The silence wasn't empty, it was a canvas, and my mind was finally starting to paint. The afternoon slump hour, 12:18, deeper discoveries. As the afternoon wore on, something shifted. The intense boredom and restlessness started to fade, replaced by a sense of calm acceptance. The internal chatter was still there, but it was quieter, like a radio turned way down. I decided to try a focused sitting meditation, this time labeling my thoughts. When a thought popped up, I would silently label it planning, worrying, remembering, and then gently guide my attention back to my breath. This simple act of labeling was a game changer. It created a little space between me and my thoughts. I wasn't my thoughts. I was the observer of my thoughts. This is a core principle of mindfulness, learning to notice your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them. I saw patterns I'd never noticed before, a recurring worry, a persistent self-criticism. Seeing them as just thoughts, instead of truths, stripped them of their power. This kind of attention training is like a workout for your brain. Some MRI studies on people practicing mindfulness have suggested an association between the practice and changes in brain structure, such as shifts in gray matter density in areas linked to learning and emotional regulation. While the science is still developing and studies are often small, it points to the potential for these practices to build mental resilience. I was feeling it in real time. My ability to concentrate felt sharper. When I picked up my book, I could read for longer without my mind wandering. My senses felt heightened. The taste of my simple dinner was more complex. The feeling of the warm mug in my hands was more pronounced. By turning down the world's volume, I had inadvertently turned up the volume on my own life. The peace I was looking for wasn't some static state of bliss. It was this dynamic, engaged presence. The night routine, climax hour 1824, the sound of peace. As evening fell, a deep sense of tranquility settled in. The struggle was over. The silence was no longer a challenge to be endured, but a comfort to be embraced. I spent the last few hours journaling about the day. Comparing my state of mind to that morning was like night and day. My subjective stress level, which I'd pegged at an 8, now felt like a 2. My mind, once scattered, felt clear and organized. The climax wasn't a lightning bolt of insight. It was a quiet, subtle shift. As I sat in the dim light of my living room, I realized the internal chatter had almost completely faded. For the first time in as long as I could remember, there was just quiet. Not an empty quiet, but a rich, full one. In that moment, an idea surfaced. I had been using noise not just to distract myself from boredom, but to distract myself from myself. The constant stream of input was my way of avoiding my own thoughts, my insecurities, and the bigger questions about my life. Silence forced me to sit with all of it, and I found that it wasn't as scary as I thought. This is the heart of emotional resilience, the ability to face discomfort with a sense of calm and clarity. My wind-down routine was simple and screen-free, following basic sleep hygiene principles that help signal to your body it's time to rest. I did some gentle stretching and a final 10-minute meditation. When the 24-hour alarm finally buzzed, it felt jarring, an intrusion on the peace I'd built. The first word I spoke felt foreign, almost unnecessary. I had gone a full day without speaking, and in doing so, I had finally learned how to listen. Conclusion. So, what did I really learn from 24 hours of silence? I learned that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. It's a powerful tool for self-discovery that's available to every single one of us. This challenge showed me just how addicted I was to noise and distraction, and how that addiction was costing me my peace of mind. The biggest change was the shift from being constantly reactive to feeling responsive and in control. My focus improved, and my stress levels plummeted. And while my experience was personal, it aligns with a growing body of evidence suggesting that quiet time and mindfulness can help reduce stress and improve emotional balance. You don't have to go on a 24-hour silent retreat to feel these benefits. The real lesson here is that you can access this peace in small doses every single day. Silence is a practice, not a destination. This experience was so profound for me, and I genuinely believe it can be for you too. So, I want to challenge you. You don't have to go for 24 hours. Start small. What if you tried just 10 minutes of silence today? Turn off the radio on your drive home. Put your phone away during your lunch break. Or just sit for a few minutes in a quiet room and notice your breath. I would love to hear about your experience. Leave a comment below and share what happens when you intentionally invite a little bit of silence into your day. What did you notice? How did it make you feel? Let's build a community of people who are choosing to find peace in our noisy world. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Subscribe for more challenges that explore how we can live more intentional and peaceful lives.